Hi everyone! Welcome to the Storyteller Shelf podcast, where we focus on kid-lit book reviews and interviews with publishing professionals.
Welcome to the Storyteller Shelf podcast, first ever recording. I'm Theresa Villarreal, and this is my dear friend and co-host Jackie Garcia-Morales, and we are so excited to be talking to you guys today for our holiday special. This is going to be a fun, casual conversation. Two friends having coffee, talking books, talking philosophy, talking all things in the world. Today I had this thought, because it's so close to Christmas, I'm having that Clark Griswold meets Mr. Bean moment. I don't know if that makes sense, but I've got to do all the wrapping, cleaning, cooking, the fun holiday stuff. But, it's the time of year.
I think the most interesting thought I had today was just gratitude. So my family and I were watching YouTube earlier this morning, and we were watching Max. He does those historical recipes. You know who I'm talking about? He was doing recipes for Christmas dessert from the Depression time.
Oh,
And they made
cool.
this whole gelatin dessert cake. But the really fun part was he was reading through all of these letters and articles from back in the day and recounting people's experiences with Christmas. I loved hearing that even though times were really difficult, people still had tradition. And because of that, because of parents especially, pushing tradition and making things bountiful each year when it came to food and presents, whatever it was, happiness was still there. I saw that reflected. That itself should be a little book of reflection in time for kids to see how difficulties happen, but
Oh,
at the
that would
same
be
time,
good.
the values persist. Heavy thoughts, I think, perhaps for a Sunday. But
When you're spending time with your family, I think having those kind of books that reflect, especially the time of year of gratitude, not so much the presents, but being present, I like that a lot better.
it's the mindfulness of it that kind of relays into something I think a lot about, which is how do you make a book timeless, right? How do you make a book last and be forever something that a kid wants to pick up? Keeping those small values and themes, even as accessories around our world change, that's something that publishers consistently look for. Especially
Right.
at Christmas, but not always at Christmas. This is also all throughout the year. It's applicable to any holiday. How do I make my plot timeless? If we mince it up and go down to the bare bones of it, what is it? What qualities about the story, about the plot, about the character development, our values are going to persist and be evergreen over time?
And that's something that when you think of books, ones that stick out where it has that good sense of values and where it really develops the character. Who are the characters and what are the takeaways from the book itself?
There are some stories that they're just timeless because they're able to captivate more than one audience within that children's group and beyond. I don't know what comes to your head when I say that, but I keep thinking of The Grinch, which is just the world's most
Yes.
relatable story. In fact, I'm gonna say, I think it gets more relatable the older you get.
It's funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about the Grinch and that I ironically as I get older, I can relate to the Grinch more.
Me too.
When you think of the Grinch, it's something that my kids, I read to them even though they're getting older. My daughter loves it on Christmas, and it's something that we read every year.
That's a really sweet tradition. I like Dr. Seuss. I know he's been the subject of a little bit of controversy over the
Right.
last few years, but he's very good besides the rhythmic beauty. He's good at leading children down to a conclusion, taking you on a little journey before you get to the real reason behind something, which is fanciful. It's artistic license in some ways, but it's also a measurement of critical thinking,
Definitely.
how kids learn to think. You learn by asking questions, and you have one thought. Is that right? Yes or no? Then he moves on. Yes or no? He's teaching kids how to go through the process of thinking.
What would you say the message is? Would you say there are multiple messages in the story of the Grinch?
I think in every good story, there's more than one takeaway from it. The nature of good storytelling is that it has a lot of layers to it. But for me, if I was sitting down and analyzing the story and I got through all the sales points. It's funny, it's relatable, it's this, it's that, it's magical. I would say the end value and the lesson is empathy. You have this really beautiful bond between Cindy and the Grinch, and it takes place because she's so empathetic and she transfers that empathy to the Grinch. That's
Right.
one part that I really love about it. It's one out of many lessons, though.
That makes a good point because it's like the turning point in the story where he's going from house to house, taking all this stuff, and he's the opposite of Santa Claus. But then when you get to the turning point of Cindy, where Cindy Lou Who, she's like, "Why are you taking our Christmas tree?" And then he has that, like you said, empathy that and she teaches him.
Mm-hmm.
You know how they say that you can never teach an old dog new tricks. Well, in this
Yeah.
sense, you can. The children teach empathy to the older generation, but I didn't think about it in that sense. Like you said, there's multiple messages that Dr. Seuss is trying to convey to the
Yeah.
reader.
Always so many beyond the obvious, too, which is something I know that you, as a homeschooling mother, you're going to
Yeah,
recognize, which is when you give a child a text and they've pinpointed, right, the underlying message already. Then
right.
you want to challenge them by saying, okay, what else have you learned from this text? So you can take out almost any line, I think, from any book and come out with a new message. Even the one about the Grinch, where he's saying, all of your gifts go into the garbage, and that's where I
Yeah.
find them. If we want, we could build a campaign and a takeaway lesson just from that. Now we've turned it into an Earth Day story. At this point, this is where the writers start taking notes. Okay, wait a minute. Breaking down my book line by line and seeing
Yeah.
how it's suitable and marketable for different holidays.
You know what makes me think is I actually was when you were talking about that I actually asked my kids the sort of leading question and it was so is the Grinch the villain of the story? Changed my mind. Is he the villain? Because then my son he said, I don't think he is, Mom. I think it was like he became cynical because of what he saw through the society of Whoville. So I don't know. What is your thought on that? Could you
I
say
feel the
yes
same
or no?
way. Yeah, and
Yeah.
your son and I have the same idea, but let's do a quick mention, Teresa. How
Yeah.
old is your son? He's 13 and he's extremely smart. He's like very advanced beyond his years. So if your 2-year-old is not picking that out, please don't worry. Just give them a couple more years of reading the Grinch. Yeah. But we are on the same wavelength. I think that is what we realize, right, as adults. When we take a text and we analyze it as children, we might have different answers. So if I was a 5-year-old, I might have seen the Grinch as the bad guy in the beginning. Then I
Right.
might have seen the citizens of Whoville as they start their bullying. Oh, they're the bad guys, but it's really hard as a child to see something that's big and green and not very human looking on the page and think he's not the villain.
Right.
So as you mature and your perspective changes, I think we all realize, yeah, nah, he's not the villain, although he's made some bad choices, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has something to work on. We're all works in progress. Perhaps that is the other takeaway of the story.
Goodness. I think going into another book that comes to mind is The Elf on the Shelf. Thankfully, we're past that stage of hiding the elf around the house. But I like in that story how they help the children to learn the idea of you gotta help your parents around the house. Try to be good. The idea of Santa Claus is helping you to have a good conscience and do the right thing. It's kind of like that in the story for the elf on the shelf. He or she will go back to the North Pole and will let Santa know how you're doing.
Let me admit, I've not read this book. I actually have a very important question, which is what came first, the elf toy or the book?
They might have come hand in hand from
Mm-hmm.
the author. I believe it's the book. It's
It came book first. I'm very persuaded to just do some research on it because that's an epic franchise and
it
something that
is.
I'm sure from a
It
marketing
is.
perspective, people are really going to want to emulate how to right lead people into an interactive campaign that turns into its own kind of holiday by itself. But back to plot. I think you've said that the elf really encourages kids to help around the house. That's the main basis of it.
It'll say, "Did you put your clothes away that have been left on the stairs? Did you help with the dishes? Basically, are you following the rules? It's one of those things. The elf moves around the house, and wherever it moves, it's going to take little notes about how your kids are behaving during the holiday season.
I've had a parent recently reach out to me, and we were talking about things like this. She has two little girls, ages 5 and 3, and modern kids are something different, right? Their vocabulary is different, their understanding of the world is different, and apparently they had mentioned that they felt Santa watching them all the time was quite creepy. It was something like a live stream without consent. For them,
Yeah.
it was very much in a negative lens, which is interesting because this elf on the shelf, then, if it's all positivity and encouragement, it's not a surprise to me that this is more popular now than perhaps Santa just creeping, watching you when you're sleeping and everything that's private.
Yes. Yes.
Instead, the elf is there to gently encourage you, follow up, and then he goes back to give his report instead of doing the old watcheroo in a weird way.
Yes. Yes, yes. As a child, I can verifiably say, yeah, I never liked that saying where he knows when you're sleeping and he knows when you're awake. But that song,
What we tell our children to be aware of. We don't want someone to watch you sleep, to watch you through your webcam, and Santa's watching you sleep. Like, nah, that's not flying in 2024.
I was never one of those kids that wanted to go and see Santa and take a picture with Santa. My mom was like, "You sure you don't want to get a picture with Santa Claus?" And I was like, "No, I'm definitely good. They have free candy canes." No.
I've heard the story before. It's the guy with the van. I have candy. You want to come sit with me? You say no.
I'm of the older generation.
She's
So I was
representing
born
people.
in the 80s, raised in the 90s, and that was always a thing at school. But what we were talking about as far as for the stories, I like the idea. Warm and heartfelt story. Of course, for us, we have our elf, and we named her. Actually, my daughter named her. Her name is Tulip.
It's
Tulip
dreamy.
Cupcakes is her full name.
Such a regal name before for an elf. I think it's beautiful. Something you mentioned, I'm a person that does not have children yet, so I get to witness all the parents with their stress during the holidays. And the elf on the shelf is a huge commitment. It is a lot of work. I know it's a lot of reward, but it is a lot of work, especially when you think about it in the context of everything else the parents do. But this reminds me, if you are a creative, right, you're an illustrator, perhaps you're a writer, how do you balance your parenting duties and the Christmas duties or any other holiday duties during this time with managing your creative duties, whether you're on a timeline or not?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And hopefully, either email us or put it in the comments because that would be wonderful to kind of get other insight. You feel like, as Bilbo Baggins says, you're stretched thin, like butter scraped over too much bread. And I would love to get an illustrator who is also a parent, their perspective on this.
Illustrators, I know that they often have a lot of space that they need. It depends on, of course, what type of illustration they do. What is their medium? What do they work in? But oftentimes they need space, and I don't just mean space to think. I mean space for all of their supplies that they're using to create illustrations. And as we all know, whether you're blessed with a large house or not, space is very limited during the holiday season, especially if you're a parent and you're hiding gifts. Sometimes the hidden spaces are the spaces where you primarily work because you know your kids are not going to go there. So maybe your office is full of gifts everywhere and now your muse is cramped and you can't think. Let us know.
Put it in the comments if you're on YouTube. Everyone that's listening in, make sure you subscribe. You brought up something really important, Jackie, in that hiding the gifts, and now you're giving me ideas.
It's going to be all in her office now.
Yeah, where are they? It's gonna be that moment where it's like I found them the next year.
Yeah. Then you have gifts in advance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I was gonna ask, are you drinking anything special, like any tea?
I have a tea next to me.
I have the morning I have to have my coffee, right? But I switch in the afternoon. I will start drinking tea and I like peppermint.
This is my weird tip for writing, which is that if you are a person who struggles with sensory details and sensory writing. So maybe you're okay with setting the scene, your dialogue's on point, but there's just something missing that makes your writing engaging. It's probably the sensory details. You can lose all of those words that you need to describe that if you are sitting in front of a screen for so long typing, especially if you're in, your cubicle area with your desk. Writers tend to get tired and they kind of lose that sensory element the more that they're entrenched in writing because they're working on getting the plot out. I find, oddly enough, that telling people to drink a cup of tea or something strong, like you said, peppermint tea has that menthol in it, something that sparks you back into yourself. It always works in helping people start to think about sensory details because you are almost assaulting yourself with the senses. You're reminding yourself that you have some.
I do this thing. I will put together my own sort of tea blend and I'll put lemon balm and peppermint before I'm writing or like and I just or I'll leave it in there because they always say that lemon balm is great at helping to stay on target.
I'm gonna tell you, next time you're sitting down and you're very splat, your eyes are dry, your hands hurt, your brain hurts even worse, and you need just something to propel you forward, genuinely, pick up a cup of tea or coffee. You smell it, you drink it, you taste it, you feel the warmth of it. It does something. It's magic and science all together, right? To bring you back into yourself. Perhaps it just creates that mindfulness that you need to be back in the present moment so that you can say, oh, deep breath. Okay, here's where I was at with the character.
I write middle grade, so I do tend to get stuck and I wind up having to go back because I completely forgot to put in all the sensory stuff. I gotta make my characters not so meh. I gotta
You mean you have to turbocharge your characters, which
my characters.
join our turbocharged workshop. We will be teaching you how to create memorable characters at the Right Nowathon 2024, and we will put links to this on our website and wherever this is. So if it's on social media, please look below and you will be able to join us. You might win a free mug or you might win an on-air book review.
I think this is also a good time to mention another book, The Arctic Fox. They have the Arctic Fox creates the snowy blizzard that allows Santa's sleigh to go throughout the world and not be seen. To sort of create that fun Christmas magic of you can't see Santa because of this, right? So again, it's the idea of the joy of the season. It's a fun book and I like how the author decided to kind of create an add-on for the Elf on the Shelf.
He says, talking about all of the heartwarming details, my brain is going right back to marketing immediately in the excitement of series and add-on books that might not be a direct sequel, but they're still part of the complete collection. I'm taking a certificate course in marketing, and something we just talked about was word of mouth marketing and how powerful it is. Despite the fact that in today's world, we have a lot of advertisements being shoved in our face constantly. You might think, right, the best way to market something is by paying for a digital ad, and that certainly goes a far way. But word of mouth is almost the pinnacle of what you can do. We spoke a lot about how to create some sort of call to action, and that funnels into interactive campaigns, which funnels into tradition making, which is exactly what this franchise has done. They've created something that you participate in, that there's emotions attached to now, that there's actual tradition being built upon and off of it. This is the way you sell books and you sell beyond books.
Goes into what we've been talking about how to do a book launch or marketing campaign. There's so many avenues that you can develop.
I'm gonna put a word of warning right now because I can feel all of the people who are thinking Elf on the Shelf, this is it. This is who I want to be. This is what I want my writing to turn into. Please do not jump into buying plush dolls for your books. This is something that I see a lot of self-published authors tinker into. And I'll say a lot of times it can be successful. However, the monetary investment is way greater than you think it is. If you're looking to create a campaign, plush toys are not the only way to do that. You can get people involved in much different ways and use the power of social media to your benefit to help you create and communicate those ways. Please do not spend all of your holiday money on buying plush toys that might be sitting in your office with you for the foreseeable future because they can be quite difficult to sell.
You want to be very selective with that. That's being an author. You have to be very selective with how you market yourself. But
Yeah.
that's a topic for a different time. But we will get into that this year.
Sure, this episode is a little different. This is just Theresa and I having, like she said, a casual conversation with you. We'll go in firm details a lot later on with actionable steps. This is the teaser, the get to know us kind of episode that will not stress you out thinking about your budget during the holiday time because there is time for that afterwards.
But for now, this is the time to focus on your family and the holidays and eating all the gingerbread and all of the good things in the world. So, if you, I have so many books, like as far as children's books. Obviously, I'm a mom. I collect those, and that's part of also being a teacher. So you have all the things, right? But if you think of a book that would be a great benefit to our audience during this holiday season that kind of reflects what we're talking about. Um, can you think of like a book that off the top of your head that reflects the holidays?
I'm cheating though because I work for this imprint. So this is not a plug. However, I'm going to go forth and say it. We have a book which you're going to recognize called Hope is the Thing with Feathers. And the reason why it should sound really, really familiar to you is because it's taking you back to English class back in the day. This is an Emily Dickinson poem. Obviously, we did not write it, and we did not hire Emily Dickinson to write it. She's been gone for a bit. But why am I thinking this Emily Dickinson poem is a holiday book? Well, it's not a holiday book, right? There's no inkling of any particular holiday in it. In fact, it's very neutral, which in one sense could make it great for a gift for anyone at any time of the year. It's a hard poem to read. In fact, it's quite difficult for adults to read, let alone children, but we've chosen to transfer it into a picture book. But I would recommend it for anybody who wants to have a break from the usual that you see in holiday books. Because we're used to kind of seeing a Christmassy or a Hanukkah book being the book that you go to. But remember, there are a host of other books and texts that you can look at and you can still learn something from them. The theme of hope, even though it's not in the same context of a holiday, goes right in with the holidays, doesn't it? I would recommend something that challenges your kid. I know this time of year, it's very much about fun. It's very much about family and happiness, and the things that you tend to read reflect that kind of joy or humor and beauty together. And they usually tend to be pretty easy books to read because you're reading it to smile, not really to do English literature. But that being said, we're all book people here, we're bookworms, and we get super nerdy and excited about books. I would recommend you pick up something a little more challenging than usual. You're going to feel how excited you are all together as a family to digest something that is maybe vastly, vastly different from what you normally read. Give it a try.
I think that's great. When you were mentioning that, it made me think of a movie. Do you know It's a Wonderful Life? Obviously, people put it together with the Christmas season, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not entirely based on Christmas. It's George Banks. He's going
Mm-hmm.
through, his whole life from childhood on to being a father and a husband. Like you were talking about hope. Throughout the year, we want that message, of hope. Now, I know I should have read this, but I actually have not read Hope, and I'm going to go look it up and read it. But I'm glad that you brought it up because it's something that I feel is somewhat lacking in our society for today, where a lot of people have been very down, depressed, and they're going through the hard times.
So we're coming back full circle to what we started speaking about, which is how to make a book timeless. What makes a book timeless? And the values that make a book timeless are not necessarily holiday oriented, whether that's a book or a movie. I know we're about books, but it's okay to say if you like the movie more. We're not going to judge you here. My mom loves Harry Potter. She thinks it's a Christmas movie. It's not a Christmas movie, but it has values that really go well for children in terms of learning for the holiday season. Basically, what we're saying, I think, Teresa, right, is that kids don't break in learning. These poor things don't really take vacation during the holidays.
We have year-round
Yeah.
schooling. Yeah. I even told them today. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you're gonna still be doing school tomorrow.
Good night. Santa will see you tomorrow and test tomorrow as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of life. You never stop learning. You never stop doing. You never stop growing. I forgot to mention, related to when we were talking about hope, I was thinking of the Christmas Carol. Supposedly, Charles Dickens wrote it for his nephew as a gift for him for the holidays because he needed something really quick.
We want to thank our sponsor for this episode, Printify. With Printify, anyone can own a successful business. Printify is here to help entrepreneurs worldwide build the e-commerce businesses of their dreams, their way. But I don't think most people know, though, that it was a poem. And I want to give a little shout out to how many amazing stories, as in books, and then later on movies and musicals, started as poems. A lot of people don't know that Rudolph, the song, started off as a poem for a department store.
Oh,
And I think that is probably one of the strongest messages we could speak about today, which is you don't know the power of what you're creating. It could start off as one thing, and naturally, as we have a creative property, it can expand and transform into something else over time.
yeah,
Right?
no, and that's the thing that should always be a mantra for artists. But here's the takeaway: don't stop writing, don't stop creating. You never know where it's going to take you. And I like that you touched on that Rudolph was a poem. For our listeners, do you know what year it was written?
Oh gosh, 19 something. Way before Teresa and I were born. I can look it up.
Though I was born something, but not that 19
Me too,
something.
but not that 19. That was way before us. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna come over here. Look. When the poem.
We don't want to get it wrong here, so
We're doing research.
yes, it's part of it.
Yeah, 1939, Montgomery
I
Ward.
thought it would have been, yeah, because I remember it was a Montgomery Ward. And of course, I think now the Rudolph song
Poem
shined
movie.
and outlived the whole Montgomery Ward, so we
Yeah,
can
it has.
say that.
So my advice then to compliment Teresa's is to be limitless with your writing and don't abandon something once you think it's done. And if you've undergone a professional editorial process, the editing process, you know that your final product is not your final product anyway. I'm
No.
not talking about that. I'm talking about when you have it signed and sealed and it's published and you think,
That's it.
Next one.
No more. Yeah. No.
I say don't think that way.
Yeah, no.
I say instead, every year, go back to what you've written and think about what comes next. Does something come next? You might have a series on your hands that you don't know about, or you might come back in a couple years and realize what you wrote is even more timely for something now than it was when you wrote it.
Right.
New campaign for it. You might want to write a new edition for it. You never know.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're done with it once it's already published. It means that this is just the next step into the fun process.
There's always more. Just because it's on the shelf does not mean it's finished.
That's
It
right.
is really only one step into its journey as a book. Really. It's funny because this is our intro of us to you.
Yes.
But Teresa and I are really biting our tongues
Yeah.
and trying to tamp down on our excitement because we want to be able to offer you segments that have really in-depth, like we said before, actionable items in it. And as you know, doesn't matter if you work in the publishing industry, if you're an author, if you're an illustrator, if you're a voice actor, whatever hat you wear, you know it's all interconnected at one point. So we could really stay on here for 4 hours talking in circles and really not repeat anything.
And if you haven't checked out our website, please do. Our podcast emphasizes good book reviews for authors. We also want to provide insight to authors and illustrators and anyone in the publishing industry. Check out our shop page because we do have some awesome merchandise for the holiday season and beyond.
You got anything else on our mind for the holidays?
Um,
What are you cooking for the holidays?
for the holidays, I'm making Christmas Eve. I'm making my bacalao. You have to check out the recipe. I know that every country may have a different variation, but maybe I'm just impartial or partial. Not impartial, but partial.
Not impartial.
Yeah, I'm not impartial. I'm
Biased.
very partial, very biased. I feel like my husband's family probably has the best version of bacalao.
And that's because she hasn't tried my family's bacalao. So if she
That's
ate all,
right.
she would know.
That's right. I'm very. You know what? One of these days we need to like have pictures and put it on our podcast social media.
Mexican versus Puerto Rican.
Yes, we will put it on our social media. How about that? And then you guys can be the judges on whose version is better. So obviously
Don't get sad
Mexico
when we
is
wipe
going to
the floor with
win.
you.
If you like banana peppers and olives and almonds in your fisherman's stew, you will like the Mexican version because I'm sorry.
And if
but
you
that's
like
the
it
best.
how it's supposed to be eaten, you will like the Puerto Rican version. So Boricua all the way. That's
But
all.
don't forget, the proper way to eat it is with one of your French breads. So, yes.
Rice. The answer is rice. These people, man, you can't take them anywhere. Cook-Off
Yes.
is another one of our podcasts that we have not made yet. We have a whole month all about food in books, so we will come back to fighting about this. So it's everybody's job to comment below where you're from.
Please go to our Facebook page and put your Christmas meal that you're making in the comments. And then tell us where you're from, too.
2 jobs. 1, please subscribe if you can, because that really helps us reach more people. And 2, if you're not too busy, to our social media somewhere, tell us what book we missed that you really love that correlates with holidays. Tell us where you're from, and what are you cooking / what are you eating if you're on the lucky side that you don't have to cook. And with that, I think we're going to leave you guys and let you focus on the holidays now.
And thank you so much for listening in, and make sure to check us out at thestorytellershelfpodcast.com.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening today. We'd love for you to join in on the conversation. Please subscribe to our email list at thestorytellershelfpodcast.com and subscribe to us on our social media. We can't wait to hear from you.